It is another Monday, and I'll get the camera kicked in here in a second. There we go. John here, you there. Thanks for dropping by, as you always do. It is a Monday. It is a reaction Monday across the board here on SDH. Welcome to the Knockouts. Field of 31 now exists. How's your bracket? I didn't fill one out, but I imagine mine would have been toast. So I'm just watching just like everybody else. Quick reminder, picks of the week. Medio, they're in the Discord. South Africa and Canada was the first one on the board. The next one is tonight. So after having a great week last week, of course, I lose the first matchup yesterday, thinking that South Africa and Canada were going to go longer than 90 minutes. I was wrong. We'll have the highlight for the reason why that is coming up in a bit. We'll also hear from Jesse Marsh. And we'll look at the first match in 32. And that's what happens when you have your email posted. So, no, I don't care. All right. This morning, as always, it's a Reaction Monday, whatever's on your mind. Reaction from the weekend, reaction from the end of the knockouts, reaction coming into the group, out of the group stage into the knockouts. If I get my upper plate to work, I think it'd be doing all right. So we'll get into all of that. We do have some things that we're keeping an eye on this morning, both in World Cup home countries and in the actual regular season for leagues and things that are going on. Manchester City has officially named Enzo Maresca as head coach. The picture is there to prove it. And the picture in and of itself, let me see if it is one of those. It is one of those official-like pictures. And it is, okay, so it is an official picture, but it appears that the signing of the alleged contract that is on the table with Enzo Maresca being sandwiched with two other individuals has already taken place at the time of the photograph being taken. Because you have three individuals sitting at a table at Manchester City. They're all smiling, looking at the camera. So we are to imagine that the idea of a pen hovering over a contract about to be signed with a smile on someone's face, that has already transpired. They took a picture later on in the roll. And so Enzo Maresca is now officially head coach. 3-year deal. City's an incredibly well-run football club. Everything they do is innovative, planned, and purposeful. For a manager, that is a dream situation. So he is now officially the successor on a 3-year deal. From our friend Ben Jacobson, Rasmus Christensen joining Midtjylland after almost 10 years after he left the club. That's coming online. Edouard Mendy had a conversation also on a 30-hour round trip after getting his knee injury assessed in Jeddah. Back with the squad tomorrow ahead of the round 32 tie against Belgium. Alak Lee wanted to assess the injury. Mendy was happy to return to Saudi Arabia, asked to leave immediately so he could make it back to watch the game on Wednesday. Still hoping to play again if Senegal progress. Senegalese Football Federation will assess his fitness upon return. Robert Lewandowski. This one is now apparently as official as you can get without the contract hovering underneath a pen on a table and Lewandowski smiling, looking into a camera. So Robert Lewandowski agrees to join the Fire. Looks like it's going to be a 2-year deal. My imagination is telling me that he's probably going to try and usher in the new building, McDonald's Field. That will be a part of his. Job description. Ambassador leading in. Also makes you wonder about Leon Goretzka. Also makes you wonder about Ugo Kuipers and what's going to happen there. Michael, thank you very much. The boss had her birthday Saturday, celebrated appropriately. And she's actually taking this week off. So the boss is taking this week off because it is a birthday turn. And it looks like Everton has agreed to a fee of £25 million on Middlesbrough to get their scorer Hayden Hackney. So there's more to get into as we go. It is early on a Monday, which means one thing. The man is back from his minor league baseball trip. We have to ask about this. We have to ask where his seats were when he went to Pittsburgh and if he dropped more than $7 to go see a Pittsburgh Pirates game. We're also going to talk this thing called soccer. Abe Gordon, 92.9 The Game, the Odyssey app. Welcome back, sir. How was your trip?
It was good. Put on some weight, which I failed miserably at trying to run off this morning. So here we are, a week before the Peachtree at certainly less than ideal weight, but we are ready to go off of a run from Pittsburgh, and yeah, here we are. What we got going on, man?
Well, I mean, what you're in that middleweight class now after eating all the food up in Pittsburgh.
Yeah, seriously, man. Pierogies go right to the hips. That's all I'll say.
Oh man, making me jealous. Welcome to the Knockouts, sir. How's your bracket?
Yeah. Well, I mean, did we wait to fill out the bracket once it gets set? Like, if that's the case, I'm 1-0. Like, I did think Canada would escape. Although you also saw one of the CONCACAF teams have to go outside of their home country to do so. And so props to Canada. I watched the first half in the Pittsburgh airport on my phone.
There you go.
At halftime, we board the plane and it does not have seatback entertainment. Oh. And I start to panic. I was like, all right, like what are we doing here? So I connect to the Wi-Fi and then I'm kind of streaming, but as soon as we get to the taxi, my Wi-Fi, the Wi-Fi works, but the whatever service I was using to stream on didn't work. So I had to take alternate measures. I did finally mid-air get a live stream of the game. And so look, South Africa felt deserved extra time. I wouldn't have been surprised if that thing went 0-0 all the way to penalty kicks. And at that point it's a crapshoot, but props to Canada for getting the job done. It was an outstanding final strike. That was the goal winner, the game winner there. And so 1-0 in stoppage time, and congrats for their first ever round of 32 victory to Canada. But it was a really well played game. I thought it was evenly matched. Certainly, both teams I think would look at it and say there were times where you thought a goal was coming for each of those teams, and a couple of really good saves from each squad and a couple of blown opportunities. I thought South Africa on the transition, on the counter, had opportunities they just didn't convert on, and that must have been frustrating from their perspective to find the green grass in front of them and not be able to get the touches in the box that set you up to get a shot in the box. And so there you have it. But a good first start to the round of 32, man. A really good game.
Yeah. We'll look at the matches today before we get you out of here and get you back to training for the Peachtree, because I just had this vision of you now with all of this weight that you feel like you've got to lose. I feel it's like the Loudon Swain workout before he goes and takes on Shoop at the end of Vision Quest. That's kind of what I have in mind here.
One of the problems with like trying to lose weight while also like marathon prepping and running is like, they're like, well, you don't want to run, on an empty stomach. You want to have, food and protein and carbs and this. I'm like, I mean, maybe I'll get back to that, but right now we need to go zero carb for a little bit and bring the weight down. That'll help out more than the carbs, I think.
Not happening. No, not happening.
Yeah.
When you look at, since we talked about Canada and the beef that they had, that they didn't get one more game in their country, or they didn't get to continue to play in their country. We talked about it last week, and Bart's biggest point was, well, you kind of need to win your group for that kind of thing.
Yeah, totally agree.
And so you end up with Canada having to go to SoFi to knock out a South Africa team that you don't know what direction they're going to be coming from. They're confounding even to themselves at points under Hugo Broos. I'd love to know what his thoughts were about playing at SoFi, considering he didn't think that Atlanta Stadium was a proper football stadium to begin with. I'm waiting for those comments. But when you look at what happened in the group stage, just in general, 30,000-foot overview as we're heading into now the round of 31 in the field of 31. What sticks out in your mind as we put a bow on the group stage in general? Could be good, bad, ugly, indifferent. What sticks out in your mind on the field and off?
Yeah, I mean, I mentioned that before the tournament even started, you kind of have to look at a different variety of what is success and escaping the group, getting out of the group, and it's just so many third place teams came through, and it doesn't hamper my enjoyment of the World Cup. I want to start there. But it does kind of leave me a little bit with like, all right, man, like you advance out of a group and you sent one team packing. Let's not give ourselves too big of a pat on the back here. You know, some of these teams that got 3 points and that was it and find a way to advance, 4 points and that was it, found a way to advance. And you know, you've got, hey, look, it's great to see Senegal. It's a team that the United States may face down the road here, but you know, 3 points there after being blown out twice. And it's just like, how do you feel good about it? I will say this, like we talked about it, I think last week, the African teams are doing well, and what, 9 out of 10 African teams advanced. And so like, congrats to them. But again, advancing, how many of them were third places in their groups? And it was just like, it's tough to kind of give the right compliments based on who got out of the group and who didn't. Some of these African teams, you're like, hey, that was awesome. You got out of the group. Cabo Verde, that's cool. Ivory Coast, awesome. Congo, we saw it right here. The celebration that went on, I mean, was that half hour, 45 minutes after their game had ended. They found out they advanced maybe 4 or 5 minutes after the final whistle here in Atlanta, and the celebration going for a half hour. It's all cool. But it's all stuff we wouldn't have seen in the last edition of the World Cup, in all previous editions of the World Cup. So I'm trying to figure out like what the right level of excitement for some of these teams are. And I think we're now reaching it. It now is at the point where, okay, you kind of squeak by. 8 out of 12 teams, you know, third place teams are getting through. That's cool. Now the question is, do any of you actually do something with it? Can you take on a big boy and send them packing? And I think we're now set up, because not really anything in the group stage is overly surprising. I think in a moment, right, we're like, oh my God, Spain and Cabo Verde. Oh my God, Portugal and their draw early on. And you can kind of look at some of the wins here and there. But now we're at the point where it's going to matter a lot more. And so can any of these third place teams actually dethrone a 1 seed out of some of these groups? That's what I'm looking forward to.
1 o'clock this afternoon, Brazil and Japan. Juice boxes have Brazil favored at a -132. Draws a +270, and Japan is a +409. Brazil, you know, number 6 in the world. And it was so funny to me when early on in the tournament, it's like, one pundit said Brazil was flying below the radar. And I'm like, what? At number 6 in the world, they're flying below the radar? This is an opportunity for Japan. But I think that Brazil, and I preface all of this by saying, should take care of business today. But there are times with Brazil that you don't know which Brazil you're going to get. And this would be an opportunity for a disciplined Japan side to take advantage of what Carlo Ancelotti wants to do against Brazil.
I actually kind of agree with the idea that Brazil's flying under the radar, only from the perspective of that, like, it feels like so much discussion is about 3 teams, being Spain, France, and Argentina. And then even England, Portugal, who's kind of been discussed a little bit, but certainly Brazil and some of the other squads that are down the line a little bit haven't really been looked at as potential winners. It feels like a lot of people are viewing this as a 3-team race, a 3-country race, and Brazil not being one of those 3. And so I do think they are flying a little under the radar. The question for me is Vinny Jr. It feels they're so reliant on him offensively, and what is Japan going to look to do defensively against him? It's one of those things where, with all respect to Vinny Jr., this is probably going to come off insanely critical. If you force it to the point where you make sure Vinny Jr. is not going to beat you, who is going to beat you? And what I mean that is a critical point is, I don't think you could do that against Messi. I think he's too good as both a goal scorer and a playmaker. Is Vinny Jr. at that level of, even if you're double teaming me, even if you're doing this, making sure it's tough to receive, making sure I don't have space, don't have time on the ball, et cetera, the stuff that you try and do against Messi and it just never works. Does that work for Japan defending Vinny Jr.? Because he's obviously been the majority of the offense for Brazil this tournament. And so if you can slow him down, can you slow all of Brazil down? And then also, just with Brazil, what is Neymar's calf doing? And is this an opportunity to kind of welcome him into this World Cup? Because I do think as conversational as Neymar is and what is he now and how good can he still be, I do think this is a Brazil team that doesn't need his creativity and doesn't need his attacking eye.
So that one is out of the blocks. It's in Houston, which means it is a covered roof. You're not playing in 98-degree heat and matching humidity. Then the second one on the board is in Foxborough. Germany and Paraguay, that one is at the top of the bracket. Winner of this one, by the way, gets France and Sweden in Philly on July 4th. Insert irony here. Germany, a minus 278, draws a plus 400. Paraguay is a plus 850. Germany should take care of business in this one. I'm not looking at this one, being completely and totally out of control.
Look, of all the big boy teams, brand-wise, Germany's the worst one. I just think they're gettable this tournament. I thought they probably should have lost earlier in the group stage to Ivory Coast. Sorry, maybe it was to Curacao. I thought there was should have been a penalty on Germany and would have been a penalty kick and whatever. They lost a game to Ecuador there at the end of the group stage. I just think the brand is better. The German brand is better than what this team is right now. The question is that enough for Paraguay to do anything with it, right? They weren't really able to do what they needed to kind of on the last match day. They're able to survive the group, but not overly impressive there. What was that, 0-0 against Australia in a game that could have gotten you a little bit further up in the group if you had taken advantage there. So, it's going to be interesting only because I think Germany can be had. And so I'm still looking for them to kind of make a mark in this tournament that hey, we are better than a team that lost to Ecuador, a team that drew earlier in the World Cup and kind of, they won their group, but it wasn't overly convincing, at least not by my purview.
Right.
And so with respect to our buddy Freddie making his way across the U.S., they got to show me something. They got to show me something in this one today.
All right. Since you brought up Freddie, let me ask you this. Is there any eyebrow raised about all this stuff, about how it all falls into place? Is it a plant? Like the plant theory? Yeah. Is this just a PR thing that we are following along on the right? Is there any doubt that this is an ersatz activity?
I definitely have doubts that it's just au naturel.
Yeah.
I definitely have some doubts, and there it's gotten us so big now with JJ Watt and Ella Langley and Gordon Ramsay getting involved and all that. He didn't respond to my direct message early on in this trip, like very, very early on, his first day in Atlanta.
Yeah.
Before it all blew up. And the refusal to show his face makes me wonder what's going on there. So, I'll leave it open for debate.
I was curious because the more that this goes, the more that my eyebrow is being raised about all this stuff. We haven't seen his face, we haven't seen and we haven't gotten any kind of reaction, I don't think, from any of the individuals that Freddie is supposedly interacting with. So I mean, JJ Watt hasn't shown up on social. Ella Langley hasn't shown up on social. Hey, we had a great time, with a picture and all that kind of stuff.
It's out there.
Yeah, so I was curious. Last matchup is the night game. Netherlands and Morocco. Netherlands, and everybody's on the plus side here. This is probably the most competitive matchup of the day. Netherlands at a plus 129. This one's at 9:00 Eastern. Draws a plus 210. Morocco is a plus 250. And the winner of this one at Estadio Monterrey goes to Houston to take on Canada. What do you think about this one?
Look, I mean, you look up and down the round of 32. This might be the best overall pairing of two teams. I mean, Morocco did great in their group. They obviously lose to Brazil in terms of goal differential or whatever tiebreakers they ended up falling to. But I think Netherlands has really surprised me. I didn't know what version of the Netherlands we would get. Yeah. I think we've seen previous entities of this squad, and you're like, man, this is a team that could win the World Cup. I didn't really think that coming into the tournament, and I'm not necessarily saying I think that of this Netherlands team now. But they have shown you so much danger in the attack that it does open your eyes. The question is, what happens when a team's able to handle that? What happens when a team plays slower or possesses or doesn't open themselves up to counters the way that Netherlands has shown? And so if you're Morocco, do you kind of play this one the way you did against Brazil in that opening draw, where you're just kind of relatively safe? You get countered and you give up a goal here or there, but you're able to answer that. I always look at this point, because there are no ties. It's going to extra time and it's going to PKs. Like, which team would be more accepting of that and which team would like to avoid that? And it's just, I wouldn't be surprised if Morocco late in this match, if they've held Netherlands scoreless or it's 1-1, start to settle in and just play for that penalty shootout and give themselves a better chance. The way that the Netherlands have looked offensively, I don't know if Morocco's searching for a game-winning goal is in their best interest against that sort of counter and how quickly things can turn for the Dutch. But sitting back, taking, a little more breath and some weight out of the ball and just playing for that penalty kick and playing for that coin flip, you do kind of wonder, like, at what point in the match is it 65 minutes in where they kind of come to that realization? Maybe you see more defensive subs come in. Is it not till 80? But I just think the way Netherlands has looking for a go-ahead goal might be the path to giving up a go-ahead goal. I just think they strike that quickly, and they've shown that a couple of different games this group stage.
Yeah, I thought that South Africa was trying to find their way to get to 90 plus. That yesterday in that,
yeah.
I was thinking, okay, we're getting later and later. South Africa, not necessarily the most eye-catching group offensively, but they're like, okay, we're goalless. Let's try to get this to 90 plus, and we'll see what happens. If we get it to the shootout, we can rely on our keeper. But then Steven Eustachio gets the goal, and it's all a moot point. And Hugo Broos apparently now retires as the head coach of the national team, and then he can go and find a gig someplace where everybody wanders uphill in the snow both ways and goes and plays a match outdoors in 12-degree weather, and they do it in old cleats and muddy fields and crowns that don't behave, and it looks like just a mud pit. So he can be a happy man now that he doesn't have to worry about anything involving World Cup stages like Atlanta Stadium. Before you go, Robert Lewandowski to Chicago. We saw Griezmann heading to the purple team. Now Robert Lewandowski looks like it's a 2 with maybe a +1 attached. He might be heading to Chicago. By all indications, he is, which means that now you turn your attention to Leon Goretzka, and is he following Lewandowski to Chicago? Interesting.
The question that I'm going to have is, anytime a European superstar comes over, and what's the mental approach here when they join MLS? Are they coming here expecting to be lazy, score goals cheap ways, or are they coming here to attack this league and try and show the world that they've still got something left? Because we've seen both approaches over the years. Obviously, Lionel Messi is come in here and is taking it very serious and showcasing to the world he's still got something left and is working hard at that. But I just wonder if a prolific goal scorer like Lewandowski, just before he even steps foot here, thinks it's going to be easy, and then realizes it isn't, and maybe has to work harder than he was kind of hoping to. And so it just comes down to that. What is the mindset and mental approach of some of these players who, at the twilights of their career, if you want to call it that, do they just think they're coming here and it's going to be easy? Because we've seen it not be easy for a number of Europeans coming over here. So it's going to be interesting. But look, I think it's great to see teams continually spending money, continue to try and have those conversations and bring in those sorts of names. The question now is what is the impact? Does it match up with the fanfare of it all?
No doubt. All right. So what's your plans for this week, sir?
Just a lot of soccer watching, just like the past couple of weeks. I do want to point out real quick, tomorrow night, 9:00, Mexico, Ecuador. I think that's an outstanding game as well. Ecuador is one of the few teams that will not be bothered by the altitude there at Azteca. That is something they are used to. The two fan bases for that game, it's one of those, like, I don't know if I'd want to be in attendance because it could get dangerous between those two fan bases, depending on how that game goes. Mexico has done the job this World Cup. Ecuador has not. I thought they were very lucky to advance. They caught Germany in a situation where they didn't really have to go for it, and they found their way out of the group stage. And this was a team a lot of people had kind of looked at and said, boy, I wonder if they can make some noise in this World Cup. Ecuador, based on how they looked in qualifying and based on some of the elements that might be in their favor, like altitude. Now, it won't obviously benefit them versus Mexico, but it certainly won't be a massive detriment. So a lot of people thought Ecuador could be kind of like a dark horse sleeper to make a run to the final 8. And so we're looking tomorrow night to see if they can make that noise. But that one looks like if Ecuador shows up, it could be an outstanding one as well. So looking forward to that. But we'll have coverage of it, obviously. I'm doing a show Friday afternoon before the Peachtree. So a lot going on there. And you know, U.S. national team Wednesday night. We talked about it. Like, the getting to 32 is not just it for the U.S. It had to be at least one win in the knockout stages. I think you got probably looking at who qualified about as good an opponent as you could probably hope for. There's one or two teams, if I could handpick, maybe that I prefer over Bosnia-Herzegovina, just teams that I maybe think can't beat you on the attack and will open things up for you. But this is a not even like it's irresponsible to call it a winnable game. It's a should win, must win, ought to win, like all of those things. So looking forward to seeing how that plays out. Get the job done. You'll see the matchup after that and go from there.
Yep, no doubt about it. Sorry to keep you into the added time, my friend. Great to catch up with you. Get to it, and we'll keep an eye on you. And may everything go well on July 4th when it comes to your cruiserweight.
Oof.
Yeah,
it's going to be a rough go, but we'll get through it.
All right, thank you, my friend. We'll see you soon.
You got it. Thanks, Josh.
There goes Abe Gordon, 92.9 The Game, the Odyssey app. Man, I had completely forgotten about the idea of everything and Pirogi sticking with you and Permani Brothers subs and the whole thing. So Abe is going to try and knock off some LBs and get back into shape. Like I said, I just have this vision of, Matthew Modine at the end of Vision Quest, where he is, where he's just in that plastic suit that they used to have like in the 80s. And you're supposed to just, run and run, and the sweatsuit happens, and then you try to make weight. And so, I just have this vision of Abe acting like Loudon Swain, running through the streets of Midtown, trying to get to a good playing weight for him for the Peachtree. Bart Keeler coming up in a little bit. Obviously, at the latest, Bart will be here at the top of the hour. And then really cool stuff coming up at 10:30, and we get to catch up with Candace Stanciel. And Candace is the city of Atlanta's chief equity officer. And also now she's the chief impact officer for the city of Atlanta. And what she gets to do with that purview is she gets to make sure that the citywide strategy to advance social impact outcomes for everyone here in the city of Atlanta and surrounding areas. She gets to oversee the portfolio that includes economic mobility, women and girls, LGBTQ, higher ed, accessibility, subnational and sports diplomacy. And so when we catch up with Candace at 10:30, we're going to go back to a moment that happened last week that she was front and center for. And it was in line with the International Day for Countering Hate Speech. And they had a stakeholders discussion where you had a group come together, and the question was, what actually works against hate speech? Stop hate and protect football. And so it was discussing practical solutions tackling hate speech, and then marking the day by FIFA, the International Day for Countering Hate Speech. And so I wanted to catch up with her, find out about what it was like to have this platform and host this platform for the city. And it was a panel that had George Weah, Mercy Akide, from the FIFA Players Voice panel, and former Nigerian midfielder. And it was Eric Ebenstein, the Senior Director of Public Policy at TikTok Global, David Gerson, whom we know from our time at Refs Need Love 2. And so it was an interesting coalition that was brought together, and I wanted to get her feedback on what it was like to be a part of that panel and what came from it and what she'd like to have come from it going forward, especially from an Atlanta perspective. So it was a discussion on what we see when it comes to just hateful speech and tied to football and society. And then it was the idea of trying to chase after solutions when it comes to hate speech. And yes, looking at it through the prism of sport, since we're here with the World Cup, but also carrying it forward outside of that idea of, okay, yes, we're here to talk about sport. We're here to talk about hate speech. We're here to talk about it in a football purview, in a soccer purview, but have it also work its way out into normal everyday. So Candace Stanciel is going to be joining us at 10:30. And it's going to be fun to catch up with her once again, Chief Impact Officer for the City of Atlanta. So that's going to be an interesting conversation that we're going to have to wrap things up here today. We've also got to get into the other news that's going on, everything else involving other clubs that are in the tournament or that were in the tournament, because we're now kind of on Bielsa watch. We are on Bielsa watch. And okay, so thank you, Rose. The JJ Watt did do an interview. It shows you how much I pay attention to the gram. But we still haven't seen Freddie, though. We still haven't seen Freddie. Is this one of those? Is this a Sid Finch moment from Sports Illustrated? Is that what we're getting into here with Freddie? The more that I'm seeing Freddie get all this stuff happen, the more I'm thinking it's Sid Finch. That's your Google search for today, kids. George Plimpton, Sid with 2 Ds, Finch. That's where I think this is going, but that's just me. So Candace Stanciel joining us at 10:30. Bart Keeler joining us between now and 10 at the latest, and we'll break through everything that is there. So morning Ropes, morning Michael, morning Alex, and morning Dell. Dell says Canada's going to lose in the next round, and I think that I think it's going to be a tough test for them. And it would not surprise me if they did. But it was interesting seeing our friend Christian Jack up at One Soccer. And he said in his post-match comments yesterday that in the past, a match like Canada and South Africa, the way that it was working in, say, the final 15 to 20 minutes, he said that this is a match traditionally that Canada loses. And they did not this time. Like I said, we do have Jesse Marsh sound, and we do have the goal from Stephen A. Eustachio. We'll play that coming up here in just a little bit. And we also have our AST Rewind to get into, plus everything to get you ready for the day in and around the sport. So just to give you some of the ideas that are going on with clubs that have not made it into the group stage. South Korea coach Young Myung-bo resigned after President Lee Jae-myung publicly condemned, quote, incompetent people, end quote, following the team's group stage exit. President Lee ordered a government investigation into the Football Federation's management and transparency, labeling Hong's appointment a product of, quote, loyalty and factionalism. Obviously, keeping Son Heung-min out for the first 45 minutes in the loss to South Africa was a big talking point. Saudi Arabian Football Federation President Yasser Al-Misahal has resigned after the Green Falcons finished bottom of Group H with 2 points. Decision came amid intense public pressure despite significant investments in the kingdom's football infrastructure. Makes you wonder now what the future is for Matt Crocker. Remember, Matt Crocker left the U.S. Soccer Federation as you were leading into the World Cup, and that was a big talking point for us, so he could go to Saudi Arabia. What does this mean for Matt? Keep an eye there. Uruguay finished 37th out of 48 teams, the only South American nation eliminated in the group stage. Under cover of darkness this morning, and I imagine it was in a Montevideo terminal, Marcelo Bielsa walked out of the airport in Montevideo. He had a bunch of papers in his arms. He had a bag slung over his shoulder, in a warm-up suit, heading to an automobile. And I imagine it was a rental car because there was no one there to pick him up. at least in the video that came out of Uruguay. There is supposed to be a press conference this morning. We'll keep an eye out on that. The last time that we had a press conference involving Marcelo Bielsa was with the alleged cheating that was going on at his time at Leeds. The individual that was sent got busted. Leeds said that they were calling a press conference, and so Bielsa had a presser, and everybody's sitting there thinking, and this was a snap call for a press conference. So then you have Leeds and Bielsa call a presser. Everybody's thinking, oh, he's going to resign, all this. It turned into a PowerPoint presentation of amazing depth and proportion. I think it was 2.5 hours long, if I remember correctly. And Bielsa went through his PowerPoint saying, here's why we didn't need to cheat. Nevertheless, he still had a videographer there in secret taping stuff in between bushes. Do we get something like that today in Uruguay with Marcelo Bielsa, or is it going to be just something where it's, cut and dried? Here's the deal. It's either going to be one of two things. It is going to be another 2.5 hours where he will continue to talk for a long stretch of time, or it is going to be, yep, I'm done, boom, boom, no questions, and he's out the door. Literally, he flies into Montevideo about 6 o'clock our time this morning, East Coast time, heads to a car, apparently. Is it something where he just shows up at the National Training Center or a agreed-upon location that can house a boatload of media? Does he basically just get on the mic? Coach Bielsa has an opening statement. Yep, I'm out. And then he just gets up from the table and leaves. Or is it something where he goes for a while explaining what's wrong, explaining what happened, and he goes for another 2.5 hours? I'm just going to suggest to all of the Uruguayan media, make sure that you have backup batteries and that you have a wall plug. I think it's going to be the latter. And Michael was talking about the Uruguayan Federation apparently canceled the charter flight back, and everybody was supposed to fly back. Coach, you're on your own. They were that mad. Find your own. So find your own. That's basically what Uruguay is undergoing right now. But I wonder what this press conference is going to look like for Marcelo Bielsa coming up here at some point this morning, apparently. So we've got that to keep an eye on. Alphonso Davies yesterday made his first tournament appearance, 15 minutes at the end, playing exclusively in the attacking half to conserve fitness. South Africa, their build-up disrupted. Canada went with a 4-2-4. Fullbacks high, and then that meant that Mokoena was not able to get any kind of production whatsoever. And so that's what you're staring at from activity yesterday. 6 goals from throw-ins, matching the combined total of the previous 4 tournaments. Overall, throw-ins, according to Opta, at a record low at 36.8 per match. Once again, it's attributed to the 5-second rule, they think. And Opta says that has cut the average throw-in times to 13 seconds. Marcelo Bielsa also argued that the water breaks disrupt game flow and offer no real benefit. A data analysis of the first 72 group stage matches suggests the actual impact of the breaks is on match momentum, often overestimated. Morocco, we mentioned them. Sustainable Player Pipeline relies on the Mohammed VI Academy, scouting 450 children annually, but admits only about 20 to their elite program. System has already produced a U20 World Cup winning side featuring 4 Academy graduates against Argentina, and that comes from our friends at Marsa. So that's kind of your run around with everything going on the planet. So how did we get from 32 to 31? It was a goal late. It was a goal late by Steven Eustachio. And here's our friends at Telemundo Deportes with the call on this one. And once again, it's always fun to hear the emotion that's attached to moments like this. So here's the call yesterday, later than late. on Telemundo Deportes, the one goal that advanced Canada to the round of 16.
Viaja la pelota, cabezazo, le quedó Eustaquio. ¡Gol! Se fue muy corto. Y Steven Eustaquio no lo piensa de derecha, le pega cruzado al fondo del corazón sudafricano.
All right, so let's check the hold note here. So the hold note goes, wow, that's a good hold note. So you had basically 2 separate halves totaling 24 seconds. So nicely done there. That's a great hold note. I have such profound respect for announcers that can do hold notes like that. So 24 seconds on the hold note. Canada advances to the round of 16, their first one in the barn. So after the match, Jesse Marsh was asked about the match in and of itself. And there's a lot of stuff out there. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to play Marsh's soundbite basically about the match in and of itself. So here's Jesse Marsh after the match on the win against South Africa.
Yeah, I think the performance was really strong and disciplined. We didn't really give much away. And even when the goalkeeper was slowing things down, we didn't lose our patience. We knew that being compact and being organized so that South Africa couldn't get themselves out into open spaces was going to be really important. And, we could have made life a little easier on ourselves if we would have made a play earlier when we had some big chances. But obviously, the timing of the goal means that the win is incredibly dramatic, and I think the effect that it will have in Canada and the inspiring of people will be immense. So I'm really proud of our team, and I thought that it was an earned victory and a well-played match.
Jesse Marsh, Michael Head has a fantastic point that I need to dig into. We need to find Luke Wildman's call on TSN, and we'll see if we can scrounge that one up. That's a good call. I like that. So Jesse Marsh once again, and to his point, I hope he's right. I hope that Jesse Marsh is correct in the idea that when he was discussing with his players before he went into the press conference room, the idea that they are Canadian heroes and that they will be impacting future generations of prospective soccer players in that country because of what they did. I hope that's the case. Because you have right now a men's professional league that is needing stability when it comes to investment. You have teams drifting in and out. You have multiple, and same thing happened in Major League Soccer in their early years. You have multiple teams owned by singular owners, and you have teams coming online. You have teams that are in dire straits financially. The league needs investment. The league needs a pathway from the grassroots levels and the collegiate levels to impact the CPL as we know it, and to be able to have that league grow. And I think in the early stages, morning Abby, I think in the early stages of this league in particular, you need to have in the CPL, you need to have markets where you're going to have people going in and filling seats. You don't need to find your voice, find your pathway. I don't think there are going to be a whole lot of ownership groups currently that are going to be looking for, a Lewandowski, a Griezmann, or et cetera. So you've got to find a way to work from within. You find a way to work from within on the collegiate level. You find a way to work it through the academy level. Our friends at FC Supra have their way of going about it, where they're looking for players specifically from Quebec province, and they want to build it that way. Supra found their voice going in. They knew what they wanted to do. you're looking now at a league that needs 7-figure investment consistently. You need a decent television contract. And right now, with One Soccer, you're getting a lot of the matches on there. Hopefully, you can get it to the point to where there is something greater than a revenue share, where you're actually being paid, but that's going to be down the line as the product continues to grow. So right now, you've got to find it from players who are professional that want to come home. You have to find it on the university level. You have to find it on the academy level. And so the CPL hopefully can draft off of this kind of success. And I'm not just talking in the short term. I'm talking in long term as well, where you can hopefully get everyone staying home. You have those local academies and the tryout camps and everything there, and find markets where this will work. There have been stories in the past about CPL franchises that just financially have just been off the rails. But personally, I'm hoping that since we're in the Men's World Cup, that the CPL will find a way to continue to grow. And also a byproduct of that the Northern Super League in its second season, the Women's Professional League, will continue to find its voice. We know what Canada brings to the table internationally. Now they're working domestically from a women's perspective with the Northern Super League. So I'm hoping that this is a springboard for soccer in general in the nation of Canada. And I'm hoping that obviously short term, since we're discussing things in a men's perspective, that it can help out the CPL continue to grow. Not just short term, but, building that foundation that we always like to talk about. And then from a women's perspective and the Northern Super League, that they can find their wheels as well. So that's my hope. Michael, where does the CPL fit competition-wise compared to USL and MLS Next? Probably somewhere between, I would probably say somewhere between Championship and League One, because you do have professional athletes that we have seen in Major League Soccer in the past. Balu Tabla has been a part of it. We know that there are some veterans, and there are some great coaches in the league too. But the biggest thing right now is trying to find franchises that can be financially stable to grow the game, and finding players that will fit your economy. I would probably put it somewhere between USL League One and USL Championship. That's just me thinking out loud. So now that we have this, so now that the question has been posed to the floor, let me look at rosters really quickly. Yes, I'm going to accept all cookies. Yeah, fine. All right. So currently, right now, Canadian Premier League, you have 8 franchises. Hamilton, Cavalry, which is, I believe, in the Calgary area, Atletico Ottawa, Halifax, what used to be York United, which is now Inter Toronto, Super de Quebec, we know about them, Vancouver, and Pacific. Pacific is in the suburbs of Vancouver, and Pacific is right now in last place by quite a margin after 11 matches. They're 0-8-3. Everybody else is kind of fighting. You've got 2 groups. Forge and Cavalry, they're the ones that you see in the CONCACAF Champions Cup traditionally. Then you have the group of those that are fairly competitive with one another. Ottawa, Halifax, York, Inter Toronto. Super doing well out of the blocks in Vancouver. And then Pacific is the one that is the last place team right now. So then if you were to look at just player statistics and league leaders, let me see how much brand identification is here in the United States. Tobias Warshevsky, and this really is, you're looking for you're trying to find name recognition if you're trying to get folks from outside Canada to pay attention to it. Just looking at the top 5s in a lot of the categories, you're not going to know these people. You're not going to know those players. But if they are known in Canada, that at the bottom line at the end of the day, that's really, really what matters. you have, and I'm scanning. Let's see, I'm scanning the league. I'm scanning the league rosters, and I'm trying to see if there's anyone that we would know from their time here. Kyle Becker, you would probably know from MLS a handful of years ago. Let's see. I know that Balu Tabla was a part of it earlier in his time, and I think last time I think Johnny Vial, who we know from Atlanta United, I think is playing for Atletico Ottawa. So literally, like I said, I'm halfway through the rosters, and I have only seen really the one name that folks here in the United States would know. But at the end of the day, it's not about what we know. It's about the talent that's there, and is it growing in Canada? And that is the biggest thing here. If you're a true sicko on this side of the Peace Bridge, you're going to be watching these games. Thomas Meyer-Jaguar from Ottawa Fury back in the USL. Lise Mousset, who's like I said, this is real. You've really got to know what's Curtis Ofori is attached to the league now. But yeah, literally, this is hardcore stuff that you're having to look into here, and knowing all of these folks. But like Marko Stojadinovic, at the end of the day, Balu Tabla. So he's now under Tabla instead of Balu-Tabla. So Balu Tabla is in Ottawa. Ryan Telfer, who we would know from fringes of Major League Soccer. Johnny Vial, who is with Atletico Ottawa, formerly of the Atlanta United chain. So it's like, what, eight players that we would know in this league from a United States perspective. But it's not about us and our viewing habits. It's about them and having the sport grow. So, there are a handful of folks, if you're interested. I subscribe to One Soccer just so I can be kept up to date with everything, especially with our friends at Footy Prime and Amy Walsh and James Charman and all that kind of stuff. But if you're into it, you can subscribe to One Soccer and you can watch everything that's going on up there. But yeah, for the CPL to grow, it's about them and their ideas, making sure that they can be stable economically first, and then they can continue to grow and figure out what they want to do going forward. So that is that's the rundown of everything that has happened with the round of 31. And so now it's a little before 10 o'clock, and we're going to bring in Bart Keeler from the SoccerForUSPod and get his thoughts on the round of 32, now the round of 31, and find out what the latest is here. And Bart, actually, since you're here and we haven't really started topics yet, since we are getting close to the top of the hour, I believe it is time for a hydration break brought to us by our friends at local Vine Beer, Wine, and Liquor stores, 2 locations here in the Atlanta area, Johns Creek and Cumberland Parkway. And it's an opportunity for us to thank them for being great partners with us. Since we are close to 10 o'clock, it's time for a hydration break. How was your round of 32?
It's terrible, John. Canada did good things, and now I'm stuck dealing with the fact that Canada has won a knockout round in the World Cup for the first time ever. It only took them hosting and complaining and whining for a good 5 days for them to do it.
Yes. So yeah, they're off and running. They are now in the round of 16, and there are 31 teams remaining in this particular tournament. And we were kind of getting into things somewhat philosophical in hour number 1 from what we saw. Let's start with the expanded field. What did you specifically think about teams 33 through 48 being brought into the tournament when we're used to seeing, different numbers? What did you think about the idea of the expanded field, and did it change your mind what you saw in the group stage?
It didn't really change my mind on what we saw in the group stage, because I still think we had those groups of death. I still think we saw some big teams square off in the group. I mean, look at Portugal and Colombia. Even with the expanded, 12 group format, you still had Portugal and Colombia meeting in a group. You had Germany, Netherlands, Japan, so there were still those types of groups that we normally see. Even if you look at the US's group, okay, Turkey qualified because of a qualifier. In theory, that increased the difficulty of the group. So, I don't think it affected the group stage as much as some people wanted it to. It did allow teams like like Bosnia, who we play obviously in 2 days' time to qualify for the tournament. But, I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. Now, from just a pure tournament standpoint, I think 48 teams is a weird number to have to get into the tournament because it does mess up the evenness and the symmetry of what you're looking at. We're in a round of 32 because we eliminated 12 teams or 16 teams, I guess. Whatever that math is. I ain't going to school for math. So from that standpoint, that I don't like, right? Like that part, I'm like, I don't like the 48 team format because you're eliminating a quarter of the teams after the group stage. And I do think that criticism is fair, right? We're playing 3 games, a whole group stage to still have 32 teams in this tournament. But again, I think it's okay to invite more people to a global party because there are a bunch of teams that obviously, especially look at CONCACAF that made their debuts, and that's beautiful to see. Would they have made that with the expanded format if, say, the US, Canada, and Mexico were hosting, a 32 team tournament? I don't know. I don't know what they would have expanded it to for CONCACAF, but that's beautiful, right? We got to see, especially here in Atlanta, Congo, Uzbekistan, Haiti, Cape Verde, those teams brought something special to the tournament. And so from that standpoint, it's really cool.
9 of 10 teams, by the way, that came in from the African continent made it into the knockout.
Yeah. Tunisia, what are you doing, man?
And I mean, it was. I think that, and Thierry Henry, to his point, if you're not paying attention to African football, actually, let me try this. If you're not paying attention to African football, that's on you. That was probably more Arsene Wenger than it was Thierry Henry. But you end up with these depth of confederation stories, and like I said, we got to see them here, and that for me, it reminds me of the women's World Cup when we expanded the field there, and my thought has always been, how can the game grow if you don't expand? Yes, you're going to have moments like we had with Curacao and Germany, where it was 1-0 in Houston, then it was 1-1, and then all the neutrals in the building, they wanted to see chaos. But then, Julian Nagelsmann was just like, yo.
I mean, if you used a 7-1 scoreline to, argue that team shouldn't be in the tournament. Yeah. Let's go back to 2014 and extrapolate that argument out then, But I think the point about Africa and the CAF teams is valid on Henry's part, because I do think this cycle specifically, you're seeing a lot of good African teams all around. I mean, we know Morocco starting in 2022, well, a little before that, but, they've been on a very good run of form for the past 4, 5, 6 years, depending on when you want to start that timeline. As I said, Cape Verde has been good. If you've watched AFCON, you've been like, oh, wow, okay, they've had 2 AFCONs in a row where they've impressed. So, the fact that they're good in a knockout round tournament is not exactly, or good in an international tournament is not surprising, right? I do think the Congo is probably the one that I go, wow, I didn't expect that from them. I wasn't expecting Ghana and Ivory Coast to qualify, but good for them. Again, you add the third place component, things get a little weird. But I do think the North African side of things got to show its quality that has kind of always been there. But obviously, I mean, I think CAF is probably one of the hardest ways to qualify for a World Cup because you have so many good teams, and the way they do it is just basically one round. Everyone's in one group, and if you don't win the group, you don't get out. And which has always been crazy, by the way. I think that is an insane way to do qualifying. So the fact that you did have an expanded field, right? You now get the 10 that qualified through whichever way they qualified, some of them through an intercontinental playoff. That, again, I think it allowed this confederation and allowed these teams to show their quality. And again, I'm looking specifically at the North African teams that aren't Morocco. Egypt has been one that's like, well, how are they not at more World Cups?
Yeah.
You know, and the fact is, well, because I ran into, I don't know, Ghana. They happen to be paired with Ghana maybe in a qualifying. You know, like I mentioned, Tunisia, sure, they didn't have a good one. Okay, they had a stinker. I had a stinker, you know. There were European teams who had stinkers. Which I know Europe has never, ever done anything wrong in football ever.
No.
But, you know, some of them weren't great this time around either. So it's just good to see, to your point, how do you know if they're good if they're not able to show it, right? How do we make the things better if we're not allowing people to come in? And I think Africa truly did benefit from that, because you see the quality they put on the field, but then you've also seen some of them, and not taking anything away, some of them get a little lucky with the third place placings, but that's the tournament. That's the tournament.
I mean, you got, and I think CONCACAF also benefited because of teams like Curacao and Haiti that were a part of this discussion too.
And Canada.
Yeah, that way they didn't have to qualify; they were automatically in. Here's your.
I don't know why they've become my heel of the tournament, John, but they just have.
Well,
I can we can have a little more.
I can give you two words as to why they are your heel: Jesse, Marsh. I think those are your two.
Yeah, but
where you know, and the thing is that
looking like a dad at the awards night, by the way, the other day, wearing jeans, the athletic shoes, and a pullover. Goodness.
Yeah, well, but I mean, at the same time, no offense to Mauricio Pochettino, but I mean, it looks like they just came off of the boat and he got himself a 45-pound marlin. I mean,
he is wearing Hugo Boss, by the way. I do want people to understand this. So he's wearing Hugo Boss because that is the official menswear outfitter of the U.S. of U.S. men's soccer.
It's all good on my.
Crazy. I'm not arguing with you, John. I'm not saying he doesn't look like that. I'm just saying
he is wearing Hugo Boss. Michael Head has a question, and this was kind of where I was going with the idea. Women's World Cup question. Did it help Thailand to lose 11-1 to the U.S.? I think it did.
Yes and no. Yes and no. I mean, I think they did not make the next tournament and that maybe doesn't help them.
Right.
But if you're using if you use the extreme example to make the argument for the whole,
Curacao 7-1, Thailand.
It's not a great, it's not exactly great data analysis, right? So did it help for them to lose 11 or 13-0 to the US? No, but did it help them get to the, just be at the World Cup? I mean, that's money in its own right. And for those women who are on the field, that's an experience that, mind you, they played more than just the one game. They did play other games in that group. They weren't exactly great, but they still did play other games in that group. So that experience alone is just, maybe it doesn't help the federation. I mean, I don't think the Thai men's federation is doing particularly great either, but it does give those players something to remember for the rest of their lives.
And to your,
I would argue that, say, like the Philippines is probably a better example of a federation that is able to actually maybe capitalize on that experience. Now, part of that is some weird diaspora and other things that allowed them to bring in some players that, are Philippine by descent, but maybe not born and raised there, which is fine. But, I think there are other better examples than a bad Thailand.
Right.
Team.
Well, and I think that it also, you have to take the experience and learn from it in the proper way. And what I mean by that is that you take the experience for what it is. For a Thai team to be on the field with the U.S. women's national team in this example, as we take this example forward, I think that you learn in that environment and then take the examples from being in that environment and play it forward. It's the financial investment, yes. And I think that that's the big element in this, the overarching thing. You're in a Women's World Cup at the time. And so what do you do with the experience on the field? Hopefully you invest in infrastructure. You understand what you need to do to help grow the game. You hopefully now have the U.S. women's national team on WhatsApp or your phone calls and text messages, and that way you can have them as a reference, have all of these teams and national teams that we're used to seeing succeed. They're now references for you in the open world when it comes to wanting your program to grow. And so I think that it's up to the infrastructure and the hierarchy in whatever nation we're talking about. What do you do with this information now that you've gotten it, I think is the big thing.
And that's exactly where I think Curacao is, right? Is, okay, you have clearly figured out a formula to make your national team pretty competitive in CONCACAF. How do you take the next step up? How do you make the domestic product? Because I think for Curacao, that is kind of the next step is, what do you do on the island to make your federation, your teams better? I think that's a fair question. Obviously, Haiti's in a whole different other boat that I'm not educated enough to talk about. But, both I think are in the way of, okay, well, we figured out a way to get this team to where it is. What's the next step? And maybe for Haiti, it's figuring out how to, well, if I could just solve world peace, I would, John. But, maybe they just need to figure out something here in the U.S. that they can work with, or maybe, they find another Caribbean island nation that wants to work with them. But for Curacao, I do think the next step is the domestic product, which, again, I don't think Thailand did enough with. Whereas you can look at other examples of teams who make a debut because of an expanded format, especially on the women's side, and go, oh, okay, well, they have now figured out a way to make their teams better. And that is the secret here. I mean, again, all these African teams, that's great. What does 2030 look like for them? How does DR Congo capitalize on this? How does Cote d'Ivoire, for example, a team that we obviously have a great reverence for because of a certain player, maybe a couple players, but do they get back to that level of Didier Drogba-esque type of guys? Maybe not, but we still revered them because of players like that. Can they get back to that level of like, oh man, they are a dangerous team? Because the opposite is true for teams that we kind of hold highly, like Nigeria, right? Who's not here. Missed out completely, and the entire FA in Nigeria is a mess right now. You can look at the women's side there; who knows what they're doing. So it can go both ways. If you don't capitalize on the opportunity, and then you don't capitalize on the opportunity of the opportunity, you're not really doing yourself any favors.
Yeah, and that was what I was getting into with the future of the Canadian game, and going back to what Jesse Marsh told the players after the match about them being heroes and having impact and all this kind of stuff. Now that you have this information, now that you've got this file, now that you have this PDF of everything that you've done here in this tournament to this point, it's what you do with the information now that you have it. And that's
all this without drones too. I'm so proud of them.
And so that's why I got into the CPL.
But John, that is a question. And I'm going to harp on this because I've been going back about it again, Canada was only able to put forth 2 host sites for this.
No, I know.
2 host cities, I should say, for this tournament, right? Yeah. Could they have added 1 or 2 more? Sure. I think Edmonton not being part of the final bid is a little bit of a loss. Montreal has that stadium I'm sorry, tear it down, build something new. I'm real sorry. I know that's a controversial take.
Saputo,
if it's not usable.
Saputo or the O?
How about all of them? But yes. But the O. Okay. Because it's not usable. You know what I'm saying? Like, if it's not usable, why are
they are now renovating it to the tune of another $800 million. And so I think that's key.
I'm sure that'll help them. And but whatever. My point is, John, to kind of talking about the CPL and the Northern Super League on the women's side, they have not built up the infrastructure. And I know it hasn't been that long, but they haven't built an infrastructure that could have hosted more teams. Because that's the thing that, again, the U.S. had, that when all these Canadians are talking out the side of their neck, it's not about a stadium necessarily. It's about, well, where are these teams training? Where are these teams encamped when they're visiting? Because here in Atlanta, we could put someone up in Kennesaw or Marietta, or put them down in Macon, or put them, at several spots in this area. I mean, again, Chattanooga hosting Spain. Everyone's like, oh, Chattanooga. Yeah, because there's incredible training facilities there. that is something that, again, the Canadian sporting infrastructure may not have. And that's something that the CPL and the NSL have to take ownership of, because if you don't have the infrastructure on that side of things to host teams, what does that say about your domestic product? Right. I mean, we still have Canadian teams playing in temporary stadiums and parks. Sorry.
Well, and I mean, what we also don't know is going in how many of the larger cities, whether it was Edmonton and Commonwealth, Calgary, and being at UOC and
Winnipeg
and playing, how many of the if we just take it from that idea, how many of the CFL markets have stadia that would be compliant with FIFA regs, and how many of them?
Not many.
And how many of them also were even interested in adding their names into the mix? Because here in the United States, Chicago was like, nah, fam, we don't want to. So
Chicago, Minneapolis, both said no.
Yeah. So,
and that's Edmonton was the only one who truly got cut.
Yeah.
Right. Which, again, I think is a little bit of a shame. I think Commonwealth would have been a good, they hosted Women's World Cup. I think Commonwealth would have been a good location for this. And especially if you go through some renovations to make sure that the field is wide enough, because it still has the remnants of the track around it. But, that's easily fixed in the buildup, but I do wish Canada would have been able to, participate more, the country, not the national team, more in this, because I think that is truly an untapped market in CONCACAF. And I mean market from the economic sense. It's just not happening yet. And it's good that the men's team is having an uptick in form. The women's team is still within this century gold medalists, despite how they won it. But what does this look like for the next cycle when qualification isn't guaranteed because they're a host?
And I did not anticipate us going down this road this morning, but I started it when I was looking at what was going on with the CPL, and we've kind of drifted in this direction this morning. But I don't want anyone, and this is going to end up being a double negative, and my mom's going to get mad. I don't want anyone not to understand that we don't want the game to grow. That's like 9 negatives in a sentence. But the bottom line is we all want the game to grow. We want the game to grow the right way. We want the game to grow so it can represent, whether it's your city in a league format, your city in an infrastructure format, your city as an academy, club format, whatever. We want the game to grow, but at the same time, we also need to be caretakers about making sure that it does so in the right way, and that you hope that you can steer folks in a direction so it can grow, because we've always thought, rising tide lifts all boats. And that's the thing that we want to do here. And that's why I go down this CPL NSL road with Canada when Jesse Marsh says what he says. Okay, now it's on you to do this and do it the right way.
Yeah. I'll just state for the record that on my SoccerForUSPod Twitter feed, there is an entire thread about how I think Canada should host the 2027 Gold Cup. So I'm just saying, I'm very pro Canada being part of this international soccer thing. They have to take the onus to do it. And that again just comes back to it. That's cool. You did this. What do you do with it? Because they're at almost a mirroring point of where the U.S. was back in 90 and 94, right?
Okay.
We got the host rights for 94, as Canada got for 2026. But up until that point, it had been a long time between World Cup appearances, right? I mean, if you remember, before we qualified for 1990, we hadn't been in a World Cup since 1950.
Yeah.
Right? England still couldn't beat us. Canada, 86 to 2022. So again, they had not qualified. They needed to prove themselves and prove not just to the world, but again, to themselves, that they could qualify for a World Cup, which they did in 2022. They hanged the banner. They won the qualification tournament or whatever they want to say. So now that they've hosted and again, it's put an asterisk next to it. They're tertiary co-hosts.
Yeah, tri-host, yeah.
Still hosting it.
Uh-huh.
What does this look like, right, going forward? Because the U.S., yes, 98 was a bad World Cup, but the U.S. from a federation standpoint took 94 and did something with it, right? We're still feeling the effects today because we got a team from that is because of what happened in 94, right?
Yeah.
Took a while, but we got a team. So what does Canada do for a CPL that already exists, right? Hey, they're ahead of the game in that respect. But again, you're playing in 3,000 seat venues on temporary bleachers in a public park.
But if that's you right now, that's cool. Don't.
What does 5 years from now? Yes.
Right. Yeah. So if that's you now, great. If that's you now, cool. What's your 5-year plan? How do you want to continue to work forward? How do you want to make sure that the game continues to grow and that you're not trying to find markets because you have financial issues with franchises that need new ownership and you're bouncing from market to market? That doesn't do your game on a professional level any good. How are you going to build the infrastructure to make sure that your foundation is fine so you can find those pockets? Look, if you are right now at the point where you are in buildings where here in the United States, we're looking at either collegiate or USL League One size, great. If that's you right now, cool. Don't sit there and say, well, you know what? We're in a league, so therefore we need to be playing we need to be playing at McGill. We need to be playing at UOC. We need to be playing at UBC. We need to take Simon Fraser's stuff and we need to sit there and build it. We need to be at BC Place. No, because then that way you've overshot who you are and it's not sustainable. The biggest thing here is to take this stuff, become sustainable and steady so you can be there for future generations across the board. Don't just sit there and overshoot and sit there and say, yeah, oh, I've got my paycheck. I think I'm going to go and I'm going to go and lease a new car and have it be, the 4-door, I'm going to go and lease a Lamborghini. No, you need to go and lease the Honda. Figure it out first. Then as you grow, if you can afford the new car, great. Right now, you need to be a Honda and you need to make sure that Honda stays as sound an automobile as possible. That's where you are right now. There's no shame in driving a Honda. No shame in driving a Nissan. There's no shame in that because the 200 SXs, they give you 350,000 miles. That's what you need right now. You need a dependable car. You don't need the expensive one, man.
Yeah. And look, the same absolutely needs to be said of MLS. And we could get into Liga MX, but that's a whole. They're
off and running.
For MLS, you have. I think you're at a point in MLS where you are very stable. And again, I'm gonna make some people mad that I defend MLS because heaven forbid you support the product that exists right now. A thing that has existed now for 30 years is solvent, is sustainable for the most part. I think you could argue a little bit about the sustainability of it, but for clubs themselves are sustainable. That is great. How do you go beyond just being sustainable? How do you go beyond? I mean, just to call out some, you got a lot of teams that still aren't breaking 20,000 attendance, right? How do the individual clubs and the league as a whole figure out how to grow that, right? And right now it's good, right? I think we can all agree MLS is for the most part in a good spot. It does not require this. I'm sorry, I'm going to say this. It does not require promotion relegation to somehow all of a sudden be a great soccer league.
No,
it doesn't. But you have to find ways to increase your competitive ability because we see what happens when we go down to Mexico in a late stage CONCACAF Champions Cup run.
Yeah.
And I think it's fair to say that if you want to be seen as legitimate and serious on the international level, you got to have more than 2 trophies in 30 years in that competition.
Yeah, true. And I think that to your point, I think that the schedule flip will help. I think going on
I do think the schedule flip will help. Yes, I do.
because you're not staggered when it comes to your team, how much time you've spent with them. Because right now in CONCACAF, you're having to start a triple C in training camp for you. When the Liga MX
which is very different than the Mexican teams, which while they're in early season for their Clausura, Apertura,
Clausura.
They have played half of a season. They're just in the little winter break thing.
Yeah.
Which is very different.
Yeah.
Very different.
Yeah. I didn't think we'd go down this road.
So we'll see. Again, but this is the conversation that this World Cup should bring, right? Because you're talking about specifically for Canada, but then also a little bit for the US. Yeah. Two nations that, if I'm going to just pretend I'm FIFA for a second, and I'm not a wholly corrupt person, but, slightly money hungry.
Allegedly, yes.
You want the game in the US to grow because that means more money for you and more relevance for your organization. You need the game to take a stronger foothold in Canada because, really, let's be honest, Canada has one sport and then a lot of others that are kind of okay that they care about, right? CFL is pretty well attended, but you know what I'm saying,
yeah,
John. You got hockey. Can soccer grow? Because if it can, that's a great market for Canada or for FIFA, right? If you're FIFA, the Canadian market is a huge untapped potential. Same with CONCACAF, all these. But also, when you're talking about the US, which I care about my club and my national team, having a stronger Canadian soccer product, if you will, market is good for the US. It's just good for the US.
It is. So what's going on at SoccerForUSPod, my friend?
We are recording tonight to talk about the I was like, well, let's record next week. And then Lawrence was at the two games here in Atlanta. And Thomas went to one of the games in Boston.
Okay.
And then obviously I was volunteering at the two games in Atlanta. So I was like, oh, so we're all busy. So we're going to record tonight in between the two knockout round games.
Well, there you go.
That are happening. I think Germany, Japan, and then whatever the late night game is. I forget.
So Netherlands, Morocco. Yes. So between roughly 6:30 and 9 o'clock, they're going to tape, and we're going to have it next.
Yes, I said let's go on around 6:30, and hopefully we get done before.
Yes.
9 o'clock game.
Well, yeah, you guys will go for a while. As always, my friend, thank you for the philosophical conversations, and enjoy the rest of your day. Continue your hydration. We'll catch up with you soon.
Y'all enjoy the day. We get 3 knockout round matches in a day, John. What a wonderful, wonderful day to be a soccer fan.
Monday. It's a Monday, man. We get to do this kind of stuff. So Bart's going to go get hydrated, and he's going. All right, now this is cool. With the world coming to this hemisphere, there's a lot of stuff that we get the chance to talk about when it comes to not just soccer, but how it can aid us in the everyday. And with Atlanta being one of the host cities, it's a unique opportunity to be a megaphone for these kinds of events and for these kinds of causes and concerns that we have in the modern day. That, yes, we're viewing it in a bit through a soccer prism, but it also is there every single day, not just when we're staring at a soccer pitch or having our games and staring at things on television. And to help us with this, we get to go and catch up with the city of Atlanta and their chief impact officer, Candace Stanciel. And we get to find out how Ivy is. We get to find out what's going on with Candace and everything at the city of Atlanta. How is Ivy, by the way? Oh, mute. Can't hear you. Is there like a mute button in there somewhere? Check your audio. I can't quite hear you. Might be a setting.
Can you hear me now?
There it is. There it
is. I love it. It's so good to be with you, John. I think Ivy is probably wishing I was home instead of in the office, but yeah, she'll be fine. And we'll get back out on the South Side Beltline very soon, very soon.
The rowdy man who is our resident guardian Pekingese mix, who thinks he is a a German Shepherd. He is hanging out under the table. So that's why, since we are a pet zone.
I love it. I love it. And, little dogs believe that somehow, I don't know, maybe in the soccer, they're like the goalie, like they're protecting everything that comes their way, they're responsible for. Like, we're going with it. Yeah.
Yeah. If anybody comes within 9 miles of the studio here, it's go time for the rowdy man.
Absolutely. And how big is your dog? Mine's a 6-pound.
Rowdy is 13.
See, yeah.
on
a good day.
Well, because then he'll want to eat chicken, and then he'll probably go up to like 14 and a half.
Oh my gosh. Yeah,
So,
there's something.
Yeah, he's a house of fire, and everything runs through him. He's the guy that has the badge scanner when you walk in the studio. He's just like, no, I don't know you, so I'm going to bark. Thank you for dropping in on a Monday, especially with how busy we are with the World Cup here. I wanted to have you on to discuss what happened last week with the panel discussion. Absolutely. That was in line with something that FIFA has as one of their earmarks.
Yeah, for anybody who's been in the stadium at all, it has been amazing to see the Unite for Peace ads, the kind of focus on how we play just as much as the way that we're engaging in the game experience. And so doing International Day for Countering Hate last week really was just a moment to pause. So I got a phone call from the human rights team at FIFA. It was between Atlanta and one other unnamed city that they thought this conversation should happen in. And I think it made a lot of sense as to why they selected Atlanta. We do this well, right? We have done this for many, many years. And I tell people, we don't stand on the laurels of the past. We honor Dr. Martin Luther King. We honor leaders who came before in Atlanta to ensure that this is how we understand who we are. But there are so many of us who are doing this work today to really ensure that anyone who's visiting for the World Cup, which we love, understands that they're protected, that we value them, and that their ways of being will be honored in this city. And I think to make sure that that happens specifically around countering hate speech is important. But we've been talking about human rights throughout the bid for FIFA and up till today.
So one of the things that has, that for those of us here in our home base, we know that when there is a sporting event that brings in the world, one of the cool things that we've seen across the board in a lot of host cities is it doesn't matter what the jersey says. It doesn't matter what flag you wrap around your shoulders. It doesn't matter what happens at the end of a day, whether you win or you lose. It's just the welcoming that we see. I wish we could see more of
every day.
But to see it through this prism, I hope is a reminder that it's that easy to do this kind of stuff.
Yeah. I mean, John, I think I was talking to some friends about this. I think we're in a moment where a lot of people didn't realize how big the World Cup was in our city, right? So locally, I think, soccer's growing in Atlanta. Thanks to Arthur Blank and so many, there's like so much happening around this space. Mm-hmm. And people kind of came to me after game 2 and were like, oh, wow, this is huge. I'm like, yes, y'all, this is big. And so it has been amazing to watch Fan Festival go from a little bit of interest to every day we're having to say we are sold out, because people are connecting with folks across countries that they would not otherwise have had that opportunity to meet. And I think it humanizes folks and says, oh, I've never met someone from Cape Verde, right? It's a small place. And now everyone can tell a story about Cape Verde in a way that maybe they didn't even know. The same for Haiti being in town. Haiti showed up in huge waves in Atlanta. And so I think these are cities and countries that maybe you didn't know a little bit about, and now you're getting a chance to not only learn about the place, but to learn about the people. And that makes crossing bridges a little bit easier, right? Because now I've met someone or seen someone who might live differently from me, might have different beliefs, might even look differently from me. But gosh, we could connect across this amazing a game of soccer or football, depending on, how you call it.
Right. Yeah. I mean, you look at the Uzbek community in Gwinnett County. You look at whether you're talking Congolese or you're talking Haitian, and that goes to DeKalb County, that goes out toward Gwinnett, out 78, to Gwinnett County as well. And in addition to it being a reminder, it's also an education for those that might just sit there and for the first time be seeing all of this stuff.
Yeah.
When it comes to the panel itself,
Yeah.
what were some of the bigger takeaways from your perspective that we need to know going forward? Because we need to know what works against hate speech in the everyday, although soccer is that prism. What were some of your bigger takeaways personally from the panel?
So I'll really appreciate one. We had two former soccer players who had been in World Cups, women's and men's, right? And had gone on to be a part of the body of folks who are really watching for what we can do better on the field. And so one, the experience of telling folks, this happened to me, it's real, that players are experiencing this, and that FIFA is responsible for making sure that the environment on the field works for everyone was really important. We also talked about referees, both the responsibility of referees to participate in managing the play on the field and the kind of interactions folks have, in addition to us protecting referees, right? I'm a go football for 2 seconds here. I'm a UGA alum, right? Many times when it hasn't gone my way, I thought that was the ref, right? And what is the interaction we have with refs? But we have to be thoughtful about the way we engage and talk to refs and talk about them and yell and engage with them when we're in the stands as fans, just as much as players, right? Yeah. And so countering hate speech means, how do I interact with this human who I might disagree with or might be seeing something differently from? And I'll just say one other takeaway that I thought was really important amidst so many was the idea of social media engaged in this process. Like, what responsibility do tools like a TikTok have in monitoring and removing hate speech directed at players, directed at refs, right? Directed at someone who disagrees with you from a team perspective, right? That was a huge component. And then I think the other piece is really to understand that each of us is individually responsible for managing the countering hate. At my first World Cup match, there was a fan a couple rows behind me who was a little aggressive in some of his statements, right? Probably 3 of us went to him a couple of times and said, hey, maybe that's not the best way to interact. Hey, maybe that's not the way you want to yell at that other fan. And I think the way that we did it was as thoughtful as could be. And so remembering that we are all individually contributing to reducing hate speech in a game experience of any kind and in the world every single day.
Well, because there is and I mean this in the most genuine way possible, there is a Southern way to go about reminding folks about the right way to do something.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Cheer for your team, right? That's the point, right? And use language that is kind and respectful, even in disagreement. And I think one of the things that we talked about on the panel that was so helpful is those of us who want to model the behavior can actually be the example in the stadium, right? So we can do this and say, going to that person, hey, we really love your enthusiasm, but we want to say that maybe some of those things you're sharing are offensive or concerning, right? And I think having the skills to do that, right? That's something we can train people around so they have the language and the comfort and the confidence to do it. And also leveraging the staff on site where helpful to say, here's something you should know. And one other note that I thought was so interesting, explicitly on the field, John, what they're now doing is there's a sign that actually just stops the game completely before we get into the conversation, before we try to, did you mean it? Do you need to apologize? All the stuff that happens when we know something has occurred that feels like hate speech on the field, we just pause. And I think that's a big statement, right? That all of us can learn something from. Sometimes the pause is the most important thing. Let me think about what just happened. Let me take a breath to make sure I'm responding well. And then how can I show up as my best self, both understanding what someone else may have experienced from me and also saying, how do I hear from someone else who experienced that in a way that maybe I didn't intend it?
Yeah, in the game itself, there's the pausa, where if you're in control of things on offense, and then things might be spiraling a little bit out of control, it's called the pausa. P-A-U-S-A. Literally, it is pause, and so that way you give a chance for your team to slow down, process the information, time to think, and then regroup and re-engage when you want to try to accomplish something.
Yeah, I think it really works, John, and I think FIFA's making a commitment to doing it, right? And then players and refs are joining in. And then those of us who are fans need to say, okay, what kind of fan do I want to show up as, right? What kind of person do I want to be? And I think soccer is a great experience because it's international. Yeah. We've been working at this for 2 years to plan for FIFA to be here, to think about human rights protections for everyone. But this is also beyond the game, right? Like, how do you take this learning and this behavior to your everyday experience, whether it's again, soccer, football, baseball, but even outside of that, in your classrooms, right, in your neighborhood, in your community.
Yep. Candace Stanciel hanging out with us, Chief Impact Officer for the City of Atlanta, UGA, and dog person extraordinaire, hanging out with us to discuss everything involving hate speech in the panel that happened last week with FIFA and how we can all be better individuals. When it comes to hate speech in and of itself, was there any discussion about how truly prevalent it is?
Yeah, so the new body that FIFA created a little over 2 years ago is really responsible for players being able to bring concerns to them. And it is former players who are part of the body. And so I think that's what's amazing is they're saying, it shouldn't be FIFA executives or leadership. It really should be folks who've played this game doing the assessment. And so folks can bring a concern or a complaint to this players group. It can be heard, and then a decision is rendered about how response needs to happen. And so I think that is a brilliant move by the organization to put folks at the top of it. And I will say from the two players we had, many people will know the former president of Liberia, George Way. I mean, just brilliant in the work. Even Gerd, who is leading the human rights efforts for FIFA, was there, former player as well. He talked about we met at the National Center for Civil and Human Rights here in Atlanta, a fitting location. And there's a new exhibit about the use of soccer to actually advance good. Mm-hmm. And I think Gerd went upstairs and it was so amazing. There was a banner hanging that he had created generations ago, years ago, and still we're having this conversation. So I think one of the learnings was this is a constant, something we're going to have to respond to. The way that hate speech shows up changes. Because different communities look differently, teaching what might mean something offensively in one place might not mean the same thing to someone else. And so that misunderstanding and that bridge we've got to kind of cross with each other. I think all those things played out in making the conversation really current. So it's not like, oh, this has happened in the past and we're dealing with it. It is something that's occurring now. But what we do know is that we're getting better at it, John. We are literally able to more quickly assess it online, which is one of the places where it's really kind of expanded because of the ease of folks behind a screen, right? And so we want to make sure we're addressing that. And then I think what's happening on the field, many players felt like had improved radically. And so I think, there was an incident earlier during FIFA where we had a conversation about a symbol that a referee put forward that some people named as offensive, right? Part of this issue is also the subjective nature of what is discrimination or harassment. Right. And we've got to get better at having a shared definition of that and acknowledging what it looks like across countries, across culture.
Yeah. And you're reading my notes because there are some things and sidebar. We did have Daniel Fuller, the curator.
Yes.
We had Daniel on last week. And so I went to the initial rollout of the exhibit and was up there. And so I got to see things that I had known about, whether it was locally or otherwise. So, and catching up with Daniel and I have resolved that he's probably going to just come back on a recurring basis just to talk soccer in general. But, when you discuss all of these things and it is right there in front of you, I think that the other part of this is context because we all come from different cultures and we all come from different places on the planet. And to the point that you were making about the video official that was shown earlier in the tournament, there are phrases and ways that you present information from one culture that means one thing in one culture, and it might mean something else in another. And so I think we have to also become self-educated when it comes to our interactions, so we're not thinking that something means one thing universally. And I think that that's key to this too.
That's really, really important, John. And I think part of what a World Cup experience does is allows us to have those conversations and creates the ability. We already talked about pausing, but it creates the ability to hear from someone else who may see it differently. And then I think the joy of what we talked about at the panel was there are arbiters of this, right? So there's this players group that can take grievances from players directly. Also, completely during the tournament, the human rights group that was set up by FIFA has a grievance line. So if you have a concern as a person in a game, a person at a fan fest, you can send your grievance, and each city has a person, me here in Atlanta, who will actually hear those concerns and grievances as necessary. And so some of them can be solved at the FIFA level, right? Something happened in a stadium. It was a one-to-one interaction. Maybe a person on the staff was able to get involved. But when it does move into something where there was an issue of harassment, discrimination, human rights violation in a city, we have a remedy body that can hear that concern, adjudicate it, and provide remedy to anyone who might have been harmed. And so we want to make sure that we're not just saying, we hope it works out. We're saying when it doesn't work out in the ways that we want, here's a tool and a resource to make sure you're getting the support you need.
Once the tournament is over, is the city going to continue to have that as an arm for education?
Absolutely. So the Human Relations Commission has existed for years. And what we did to prepare for FIFA was actually got them some training with the FIFA Human Rights team to just expand their capabilities to prepare for this particular experience. But they constantly support and serve anyone who's experienced discrimination or harassment in the city of Atlanta. You can find us on the City of Atlanta's website, put in a case or a concern, and we will respond immediately. So yes, they've been in existence. They're here. And the goal is to make sure that anytime these situations occur in the city, that we have a place to talk through them, to weigh the concern, and to really respond appropriately.
This isn't necessarily a World Cup question, but it goes to the parallels that we've been addressing this morning. How good a listener are we these days when it comes to conversation, understanding others, mores, beliefs, other cultures? How good a listener are we as a people these days?
Yeah, John, I hope we're getting better. That's what I'll say every day. Part of my work has been training on engaging in positive conflict, not seeing conflict as a negative tool, but as really an opportunity where that friction happens is sometime where good learning occurs. And I think, obviously I work in government, and there are unique tensions that exist when trying to move government forward. Yeah. But I do believe you've got folks who are sitting in seats who want to do this work well together. I think often one of my quotes I said on the panel, our values are the same. We believe in respect, kindness, good communication. We have values that say we should show up, but how those values play out is sometimes what's different, right? So what does respect look like to someone else might not be what I anticipate respect is. And so the ability to have the conversation and to listen is really a critical part of how we get better at it. And I think, John, sports is this amazing place to do it, right? Like in the stadium, when I'm sitting next to another fan for my team, whether that's UGA, whether that's UCLA, got a lot of schools. I'm a Hawks lover, right? Whatever those places are, I don't know you, but I know something about you. And I know that we care about something. And if we can use that as a container to start the conversations about where we might see the world differently, maybe that's a path that helps us get to better listening.
So then for those of us that might need to get the wax out of our ears, how do we make that happen, but not make it seem like we're forcing the Q-tip, if you understand where my analogy is going?
I do. I mean, two things come up for me, John. One is when you get a ticket, who do you take with you, right? Who's a person maybe I want to have a conversation with that maybe I wouldn't otherwise? Like, oh, could we go to a game together? Could that be something we do? And then it leaves space for relationship building, because that's the first thing that we're going to have to do, right? So who's someone who's different that maybe you'd love to get to know or spend some time with? Can we go to a game? And then I think there are those of us like myself who are trying to create these spaces for the conversations to happen. So after FIFA concludes, we're doing a professional sports conversation career experience for women and girls. So girls and women who work during FIFA and cool different jobs, like come together, let's talk about it. Well, those girls and women won't all be the same, right? They'll have experienced life from different vantage points, different counties in the city, different places across the globe, perhaps. We want to hear what they're thinking, and it leaves then the opportunity for them to connect, but also to have other conversations. So I think, who are the folks trying to create those spaces? And there's a lot of good work happening around Sport for Good. I want to give really deep appreciation to a lot of local organizations who've taken this on. And so if you have a chance to join in some of those spaces, that's where I think the needle gets moved, where it's really like, we love this game. We love this experience of sport, and we believe it can do even more to connect humans.
Okay, so then can you do me a favor when that panel and when that information session happens? Can we bookmark it so that way we can revisit and you can come back and talk about that after that happens?
Done, John. No problem at all. And we'd love to stay in community. I think I spent maybe a year and a half ago, I went to the UN for a conversation on sport and human rights in preparation for this. There's a number of us who are leveraging all the sports, soccer included, but also when we go to the Olympics in LA in 28, right? What does it look like for sports to produce good? Some people may remember when the Olympics was in LA many, many years ago, they created a foundation after, and that funding has funded literacy training for young people, youth programming. So sport can leave a legacy. And I think one of those things we're doing now in Atlanta, we have a human rights action plan. It has 8 legacy initiatives. After the games are over, what sticks, right? How have we developed young people? How have we created leaders? How have we positioned some of these conversations about human rights and created an ecosystem around human rights that makes Atlanta well prepared to be a voice for what good can look like in sport and anywhere else?
Awesome. So we've officially bookmarked it. You now have your RSVP for coming back. And as someone who is an Orange County kid,
Yes.
I was born in Lakewood at Lakewood General Hospital, right off the 91 freeway.
Wow.
When it was a single level neon sign deal, that's back in the days of the Industrial Revolution. That's when I was born.
Not that long ago, John. Not even.
But I did spend time at Ackerman Union and fell in love with the bowling alley. So I know of which you speak when you discuss things at the hallowed halls of UCLA. And as a Fullerton guy who loved the baseball program and kind of grew up with all of that, as half of my family was back there, I know of which you speak when you're talking about the 213 and the 714.
Absolutely. And John, you will know, the basketball coming out of Orange County, it is legendary. So yeah, again, using sports. So I worked for a small program, nonprofit, I'll make this really quick, for boys and girls who needed additional support from their families. And we sent a lot of kids to amazing schools where they used athletic scholarships to move into better economic situations, right? So this stuff works. And I think there's a real opportunity for those of us who love it to leverage it for the best that it can be.
And we cannot wait to see this continue to grow. Candace, I can't thank you enough for dropping in, especially on a Monday when we're all trying to rub the sleep out of our eyes and get ready for the group stage of the World Cup. It's been a great time downtown. City of Atlanta has been gangbusters and need to be shown, frankly, on national broadcast just a little more instead of other cities. But that's
Atlanta's doing it well. We are. I am 3 games in out of the 5 that we've had. Oh my gosh, I can't believe we're here. And a few more to go. 5 done.
Yeah, 5 done. We got 3 to go here.
3 to go.
The knockouts, and it's crazy. You know where the garage door opener is. You know where the key is under the mat. Come in and crash anytime, and we'll. You can sit. I'll talk Fullerton baseball, and you can talk UCLA basketball, and we'll run it. Thanks for dropping by on a Monday.
Thanks, John. Have a great rest of your day.
You too. That's Candace Stanciel, and it's great to catch up with her and let you know what's going on with the City of Atlanta, Chief Impact Officer. Very, very cool stuff. And so, once again, it's something that the City of Atlanta is doing, and it's really cool to have Candace come by and talk about things the way that she did this morning on a Monday. I can't thank her enough. Chief Impact Officer for the City of Atlanta, Candace Stanciel. Okay. All right. So let's get into gossip, rumor, and innuendo, what to watch, where to watch it, how to watch it. I'm going to do a quick Marcelo Bielsa search. Abby, to your question. Yeah. It's, she said, glad FIFA has done this. Wonder what took him so long. Sometimes when it comes to easy solutions, sometimes it takes the longest for that to happen. That's just, that's point blank. That's what happens sometimes. This was an absolute no-brainer. And for the City of Atlanta to take the initiative that they are, when it came to having the panel discussion and making sure that hate speech and behavior has no place, I'm glad that this panel happened. I'm glad that we were able to catch up to find out more about it. And, and Abby, to your point, the ISC, Abby says they've been talking to him for years and years. And sometimes, it is about continuing to emphasize and push upon them how important something is. So I'm glad that we are to that particular point where you hope that now that makes this kind of an impact going forward. All right, we talked about Lewandowski, and we talked about what might be happening. We do kind of have a bat signal out. We're waiting for things to become officially official, and we'll catch up with our friend Max Anderson, play-by-play voice for the Chicago Fire, when we find out what the latest is there. It looks like Lionel Scaloni might be signing a deal with Argentina to keep him through the 2031 cycle, or past 2030 and heading into 2031. So we'll find out what the latest is there. Let me do a quick search and see if this press conference with Marcelo Bielsa has happened, and we will see if El Loco has been off and running this morning. It is, like I said, late morning, so literally 10:55 minus 3, so like a little bit before 8 o'clock this morning. A little bit before 8 o'clock this morning, El Loco came in, but we do not have any kind of an update as to what is going on in Uruguay. So don't have anything about a press conference or a time that something could be going on, but we will obviously keep you posted on this, and we'll find out what the latest is out of Uruguay. So keep you posted on that, and let you know what happens there as we continue to roll forward here on a Monday. Also on the board this morning, it was something that was interesting involving the Telegraph. Telegraph produced an article that came out this morning, and it has to do with officials, and apparently now the designation of them is going to be a little different. Sam Wallace, English referees are undergoing a corporate rebrand next season. PGMOL is going to be known as Pro Ref. It's going to be a part of a drive to better explain their place in the English game. And then Sam Wallace's article having to do with the rebrand, once again, headed by Howard Webb, ref in the 2010 World Cup final. Body oversees the 4 professional divisions, National League, WSL, and the U21 Premier League 2, jointly owned by the Premier League and the FA and the EFL. So the change of the name is going to be a part of a drive to better explain Pro Ref's place in the English game to continue what Webb sees as a crucial modernizing process. He appealed to the clubs to invest more resources in Pro Ref in order to make sure that the Premier League does not just represent the most competitive league in the world, according to Wallace's copy, but also has the leading officials. Refs and assistants attending the conference given notepads and pens with the new Pro Ref branding. Remember, Howard Webb also worked in the U.S. with MLS, where Pro Ref equivalent is known as Pro. Excuse me. One of the most heavily scrutinized institutions in British public life, according to Wallace. Introduction of VAR has been a huge increase in cost and resources. Well, yeah. Most of which supported by the Premier League. Webb and Daniel Every, the Pro Ref chief exec, laid out a plan for the future, pitched to Premier League and EFL clubs. Since then, Pro Ref won a crucial legal ruling in its favor against the Supreme Court decision found it owed around £580,000 in unpaid employment taxes to His Majesty's Royalties and Customs. That's the tax man. Case disputed the status of National League refs, whom Pro Ref successfully argued were contractors rather than employees when it came to tax and national insurance payments. And Webb has been chief ref officer since December 22, widely tipped to be recruited to a similar role at FIFA when Pierluigi Collina steps down, whenever that happens. So PGMOL is going to become Pro Ref next year. Pro Ref. We'll keep an eye on that. So let's see how busy our buddy Ben Jacobs has been today internationally. I think Ben is still here in country as he continues to chase after the tournament in and of itself. We mentioned all of the names and the signings with Enzo Maresca having the pen down, but it was all 3 individuals at Manchester City. Apparently, this was a post-pen pick where 3 individuals are staring at a camera, paper in front of Enzo Maresca. So I guess we are to sit there and assume that the paper was signed, but we do not have the picture of the pen hovering over the paper, waiting for it to be signed, and Enzo Maresca looking up and smiling at a camera. Liam Rossetti are in advanced talks with Paris FC to become their new manager, according to Foot Mercato. Multiple approaches this summer, and he could be back in Ligue 1. Rangers set to sign Ivor Pandor from Hull City for £6 million. Jack Butland's going to move the other way in a deal worth $3. Then Manchester City came out with a statement. Elliot Anderson passed his Manchester City medical ahead of signing the 5+1. We'll keep an eye on that. Multiple pictures involving Enzo Maresca. Most of them have been released. Within the hour, Sam Kerr, Gotham, has confirmed return to the club as a free agent, signing a contract through the end of 2030. Spent 2015 through 2017 with Gotham, which was then Sky Blue, won the 2017 Golden Boot in the NWSL. And so we mentioned all the other signings, but Sam Kerr back in the NWSL. Back in the NWSL, big pickup for them. Nasser Al-Khalifi is now open direct talks with Leipzig to try and close the deal for Jan Diomande. Understand that former Leipzig CEO Oliver Mintzlaff, chairman of the supervisory board, directly involved in discussions with the PSG president. PSG is confident on agreeing to a fee. Bradley Barkle is still high on the thoughts of Liverpool from PSG. Now, getting into gossip, rumor, and innuendo. And for those of you who are tennis fans, today's the beginning of Wimbledon. So that is keeping an eye on that for those of you that like to just wear white clothes, regardless, and collared shirts. You got to have a collared shirt, and you've got to be wearing white top, white shorts, and be a part of what's going on. You have to do it their way. Locked into tradition. Wimbledon kicking off today. Harry Kane, one of 3 options up front being considered by Barcelona. Liverpool monitoring the situation of Cologne winger Said El-Mallah. Barcelona considering a move for Harry Kane, according to the 4-letter paper. Take the information at your own peril. Expressed interest in the 32-year-old, 1 year left on his deal at the Allianz, set to explore a potential switch at the end of the World Cup. Kane isn't actively seeking an exit, but the La Liga side prepared to go all out to sign him. Barcelona still holding interest in Bournemouth forward Junior Krupi as an alternative to Julian Alvarez, according to Diario Sport. Mundo Deportivo reporting that Juve's Dusan Vlahovic is a free transfer who could replace Ferran Torres if he leaves. Liverpool monitoring the situation with Said El-Mallah. Nicola Shearer reports that the Reds have shown interest in the 19-year-old, linked with Chelsea, Brentford, Brighton, as Liverpool try to chase a successor to Mo Salah. 13 goals in 34 matches last year, is seen as an alternative to Jan Diomande, after sources told ESPN PSG closing in on the deal to sign him worth around €100 million. Chelsea interested in Rayo Vallecano left-back Pep Chavarria, according to Marca, ID'd by the Blues as a potential successor to Marc Cucurella, who's set to join Real Madrid for €55 million July 1. Contact already made with the La Liga club regarding a deal for Chavarria, with the release clause in the contract worth in the region of €30 million. Real Madrid midfielder Eduardo Camavinga is attracting interest from PSG and Inter Milan, according to Diario AS. 2 clubs among several that are attached to the idea, trying to reinforce their squad in other areas. Camavinga made 43 appearances all comps last year, set to discuss his future with Jose Mourinho before a final decision is made. And if Los Blancos are open to offloading, if they get an offer worth €60 million, €60 million in hopes of reinforcing the squad. Curtis Jones at Liverpool, on the radar of Nottingham Forest. Liverpool reported to have received an inquiry for the 25-year-old. Forest looking to find a long-term replacement for Elliot Anderson, since he has agreed to that switch at Manchester City. £40 million would be required. It's been a sticking point with Inter Milan over a transfer. Also, once again, we mentioned PSG. We mentioned Lewandowski. Granit Xhaka. Chelsea's exploring a deal roughly in the neighborhood of £8 million. Xabi Alonso has a close relationship with him, views him as an experienced player capable of leadership in the dressing room. PSG's Bradley Barcola, once again, high on the short list of Liverpool, according to Fabrizio Romano. 4-letter paper. Manchester United have the advantage over Arsenal in the race for Bournemouth midfielder Alex Scott. Foot Mercato, Malo Gusto. Chelsea's right back agreed to personal terms with Manchester City. Team talk. United and Chelsea, the leading contenders for the signature of Felix Nemeka from Dortmund. 4-letter paper. Newcastle looking at Freiburg and Switzerland international midfielder Johan Manzambi. Gazzetta, Juve interested in reuniting with Roma attacking midfielder Bentia Sula. Also, AC Milan keen on Benfica defender Antonio Silva. Mate Moreto, Benfica set to sign Atletico de Madrid defender Clement Lenglet. Team talk, Spurs have no plans to part ways with midfielder Archie Gray this summer. So that is the rundown of all of the gossip, rumor, and the innuendo. What to watch, where to watch it, how to watch it. Once again, brought to us by our friends at Fanatis, fntz.co/soccer down here. That link is important. Helps us, helps them, helps you. Add to your streaming services. You can get most of the A and B divisions, access to them with the networks that are available currently. CDO Plus out of Chile. Liga 1 Max Pro out of Peru. TIC out of Argentina, which also means you get their daily coverage of the World Cup, and you also end up with Copa Argentina, which has its own brand of chaos attached. TVV out of Venezuela, but as I always say, if you have the Spanish-speaking package with a particular cable provider, then you can have TVV on that. You won't necessarily have to pick it up as an add-on on Fanatis. They also have links to Tigo Sports and also to CATV. You get Libertadores and Sudamericana through the relationship with BN and Espanol. You get all the BNs. Middle East, North Africa, you get CAF, AFCON, U17s, anything involving that's on there. You end up with the European leagues that are on the BNs, the French league, the Polish league, and what's the third one that I always end up forgetting? Oh, the Turkish league. So you get those three with BN. You get all the BN coverage, wall-to-wall, 24/7, 365. You get all that at Fanatis, fntz.co/soccer down here. Round of 32, 3 matches. Big FOX has them all. 1, 4, 30, and 9. Brazil, Japan, Germany, Paraguay, Netherlands, and Morocco. Fox O&E the same. Telemundo the same. Peacock the same. So choose your poison, choose your place. Big FOX, Fox O&E, Telemundo, and Peacock. So that's the latest with all of those. Now, once again, and I'm scanning to see if there's anything else that we might have missed or that I might have missed because of who we had for guests today. And we'll thank them coming up in a bit. Abe Gordon, 92.9 The Game, Bart Keeler, SoccerForUSPod, and hanging out with us. And then also, once again, when we get to go to catch up with the City of Atlanta, the Chief Impact Officer, Candace Stanciel. It's great to catch up with her and find out about the panel last week and FIFA's day where they had the gathering once again, countering hate speech panel and everything that was there for the City of Atlanta, and also operating under the Stop Hate Protect Football moniker. It was FIFA and TikTok and the City of Atlanta having the great gathering there. And according to FIFA, their social media protection services kicked over 30 million abusive posts and comments since the FIFA World Cup back in Qatar in 2022. So a great opportunity for stakeholders to come here to the City of Atlanta within the World Cup purview. But you also want to try and figure out how to do this and have it be a part of your everyday. And we were discussing the Mexico-Ecuador match, and the get-in price right now on StubHub for that matchup, get-in price, $2,400. And that's in the 600 level at the Estadio Azteca. Abby, thanks for coming in as you always do. So get-in price, $2,423. But then it goes from there, and boy, does it go from there. Boy, does it go from there. You're looking at 9,300 and some. You're looking at 3,100 in the end zones, 4,500 caddy cornered behind a corner flag, lower level. $5,400, close to probably at the 30-yard line. $6,000, depending on which side you're interested in. But get in $2,423. Looks like best value might be 26.42, but you can go from 9,400 to 2,400 if you want to go see Mexico and Ecuador in match 79 tomorrow night. So that's where the secondary market currently has what's going on involving the World Cup itself. Here at Atlanta Stadium, secondary market anywhere from 580 to basically 2,500. Upper tank, you're looking 600 in the 300 level, depending on where. 700 in the end zones. You get into the 200 level, you're getting into the $1,000 range. 25-12 from the 30-yard line, press box side. So that's where one secondary ticket market for matchup 80 tomorrow or Wednesday involving the U.S. and involving England and DR Congo. That one's on the board. So all locations, 2% of the tickets apparently are left for Netherlands and Morocco tonight. 4% of the tickets are left at Jerry World. Same for East Rutherford tomorrow. Mexico and Ecuador, 2% left. And then England and DR Congo at noon on Wednesday. Noon Wednesday is when that matchup gets to be a part of the three matches that are left here in Atlanta Stadium, and find out what it's going to be like there. But yeah, secondary market, not cheap. Tomorrow, KCD is going to join us at 10 o'clock for her tour of the World Cup. And she's been touring. She was in New York, and I think she did CBS Saturday Morning, and she's done a bunch of other things. And she is up there, and she is crushing it. And she's going to hang out with us at 10 o'clock tomorrow morning. Also at 9 o'clock tomorrow morning, we're going to catch up with Chad Gabert, assistant professor at Kennesaw State University, looking at technology and innovation in sport, immersive technology and marketing. And so we'll catch up with him, find out what he learned with his time in the Florida High School Athletic Association as an AD, and now as an assistant professor at Kennesaw State. I'm going to find out what he thinks about marketing and immersive marketing and technology and athletics. We're going to catch up with him out of the blocks about 9:10 tomorrow morning, so it'll be a fun conversation there. Wednesday, early. Because of the noon match downtown, we're 8 to 9:30 on Wednesday morning. Thursday, obviously, it is going to be pretty much everything review preview, then the Power Hour with Nino and Nico, and then Friday we'll get you ready for the weekend. But once again, tomorrow, visits from Kennesaw State and KCD. Wednesday, early show. Early, 8 to 9:30 because of noon kick. And then we're going to look at everything USMNT, review, preview, and the Power Hour on Thursday, and that'll get us to Friday, and that'll get us once again through as we continue to push through here as we start the knockout stage in the World Cup. Starting it yesterday, first full day, really, of the knockout stage here in the World Cup in 2026. Before we get out of here, I want to recheck juice boxes just to make sure that things either aren't changing, have changed, or are completely out of control. Brazil's at a minus 135, favorite against Japan. Germany is a minus 270, big favorite there. And Netherlands and Morocco. Netherlands a plus 129, Morocco is a plus 250 for the nightcap. So not much changing early on. I would anticipate those numbers may move a little bit when it comes to later on in the day. So thanks to all of our guests here this morning to break it all down. Thanks to all of y'all for hanging out. OG with a quick note before we get out of here. Genesco, who manages programs and activations for FIFA, said Atlanta has been the best. One GSE rep had been a part of the first Miami match, said it didn't even compare to Atlanta. Stuff we knew, people. Atlanta's kicking ass. Thank you, OG. Once again, Discord has picks of the week. Week 3 of the Medio, it is up. So week 3 of the Medio is up. The first match was yesterday, South Africa, Canada. Next match is Netherlands and Morocco tonight. Picks are in the Discord. Discord away, people. Back at it again tonight with Atlanta Soccer Tonight. Let me double check the time really quickly, just so you know when to tune in and catch up with Jason and find out what is going on at 92.9 The Game. So tonight, I think it's 9 to 11, if I'm not mistaken. Don't quote me yet. 10 o'clock, so it's 10 to 12. So 10 o'clock, 92.9 The Game in the Odyssey app. Jason will recap the 3 matches for today, and we'll know what their paths are heading into the round of 16. So 10 o'clock, 92.9 The Game in the Odyssey app, and also the 92.9 Facebook, YouTube channel. And then at 11 o'clock from there, it is Three-Dimensional Experience, 92.9 The Game's YouTube channel, and we'll have stoppage time there as well. So 10 o'clock with Jason for AST tonight. Oh, crap, that reminds me. Before we get out of here, it was a false out on my part. Since we're talking AST, here's your AST rewind from last night where Jason's talking about the group stage.
I think the real story, I'm not going to say that Africa is going to win a World Cup soon, or Asia or CONCACAF are going to win a World Cup soon. It's been Europe, it's been South America, that's been it. I do think the floor has risen in this tournament and just around the world. I think the bottom end of teams in national team play have gotten better, and that's a good thing for the top teams. That means it's more competitive. That means you get more tests. We see that in CONCACAF now, and CONCACAF Nations League, I think, was a huge element in this. Teams like Curacao, teams like Haiti, teams like that got more competitive games between World Cups and between World Cup qualifying, and they've improved. And then they were able to do the things that they did to get to this World Cup. When they get back, they're going to be in a position to be able to do more than just arriving. That's the next step. I think getting to the levels is a good thing. Africa now not just settling for being there, but now starting to look at, okay, we're going to get to the knockout rounds consistently. Okay, we're going to have some teams that make runs. That's how it really starts to change. But you have to get to the next level and at least taste it a little more than just once to be able to win this thing, I think.
Atlanta Soccer tonight, 10 o'clock, 92.9 The Game, Odyssey app, 92.9 The Game YouTube channel. Three-Dimensional Experience with Jason, looking at today's round of 16. Throw it at 32s. Wow, getting ahead of yourself. And who gets into the round of 16. And then YouTube channel from 11 o'clock and beyond for stoppage time. Wednesday's going to be huge. It's going to be a long day. And we're still trying to figure out where Atlanta Soccer Tonight is going to be from 6 to 8. So 8 to 9:30 here on the air, SDH AM. Then there's the match. Then we'll be heading eventually to where we're going to be in the afternoon and evening as your pregame for the U.S. in their match with Bosnia and Herzegovina. So Wednesday's going to be a long day. It's going to be a fun day. But welcome to the knockouts, people, and enjoy your time pushing through. For everybody here at SDH AM, I'm just John. Back at it again in what? A little under 11 hours. 10 hours and 42 minutes. Well, 10 o'clock. So 42. Yeah. 10 hours and 42 minutes before Jason and Atlanta Soccer Tonight over at 92.9 The Game. And we're back at it in a little less than 22 hours with the Tuesday version of SDH AM. So for everybody here, to all of you there, thanks for dropping by as you always do. Mucha Platiel, play it safe. Since it is the end of the show, at least the AM version, means I get to do this. We'll see you in a bit.